The most important ingredient of your brand is a story, and your logo is just another chapter of that story. It doesn't tell the whole story. It's just one little piece of the story. It's one little piece of your visual brand identity. And your brand identity consists of your logo, but it also consists of your color palette, your typography, so the fonts you're using, other brand elements, and the image style, what kind of photos you're using. A logo is the brand's whole personality boiled down into an easy to recognize image. It's often the first interaction you have with a brand, and it's supposed to be the thing that sticks in your mind. And it brings up the memories that you have with the brand, kind of like an anchor. So you have all those different interactions with and experiences with the brand, and the name and the logo is the sticky part. That's the thing you remember. And whenever you see that, it will bring up all the memories you have with the brand, all the experiences. Your logo goes on almost everything, like your business cards, your website, your merchandise, social media pages, all of your marketing and advertising materials. It should represent what your brand is all about and encapsulate the essence of your brand identity. You can't put everything in there, but it needs to all be possible to go under this. The main parts of the logo are the logo mark. So that's usually like a little icon or pictogram or graphical element of sorts. And it's usually what people recognize the most. The word mark is the text part of the logo. And some brands only have a word brand, like Coca-Cola, for example. If you don't have a logo mark, if you don't have a little icon, you really want to put some work into the typography and the fonts of your word mark. You want to make it stand out, and you want not just a pre-installed font of your computer. It needs to be recognizable, and it needs to remind people of your brand and not of the menu at McDonald's or something. So they need to be more readable for sure at different sizes, because they can't be replaced by something else. Like this icon can get really small and you still know what it stands for. But with the text, if it's only text, it always has to be readable. So even if it's really small, you have to make sure that you can read it. You can include the tagline, but you should definitely also have a version of your logo without the tagline. Some brands also include other things like an establishment date and the location, sometimes only one of the two, sometimes two. They offer a little bit of background history of a brand. Including them was a lot more common in the past. And for that reason, logos that have it have more of a vintage look and feel. So make sure that works with your brand persona and your story. If you're a really super modern tech brand, you might not want to include an establishment date. It doesn't really make sense. Or if you have a rebel brand that breaks with the status quo, it just doesn't make sense to bring up tradition with a logo that has a location and an establishment date. All the visual stuff, including your logo, is based on that brand persona. And that brand persona is based on the work you've done, looking into your audience, your competition, and then your brand essence, how you want to show up, your core values, and all those things. You also should have different logo variations. You want a primary logo. So that's the logo you use most of the time. But you also want some positional variations. So if you have a stacked logo like this, you want to make sure that you also have a horizontal version like this. For example, in the menu of your website, you will need something like this. Otherwise, you have to make this really small and then you can't read it anymore. So just have a different version. You probably also want, depending on how complicated your logo is, if you have a logo like this, you also want a simplified version because you can't put this on everything. It's too complicated. So you need a simpler version of this as well. We also include usually a round or square version because nowadays you just need those for social media profiles, for example. And then you can also have submarks, which are really, really simple versions of the logo, sometimes only the logo mark. And those are super versatile because you can use them for merchandise, for example, and you can use them for the favicons, for the tabs, or as watermarks in your social media graphics, on your podcast cover, wherever your heart desires. You can brand things with the submarks without them looking like merchandise items, like stickers or water bottles or notebooks or something like that. Something that you might hand out to patients they're more likely to use them if they don't have your name plastered all over. But if they have the little submark like this on them, or even like this, but this is probably better, they will still be reminded of your brand every time they use the item without feeling weird about having your name on their water bottle. And you can also create different color versions like you see here for different services, for example, or if you have different products you offer, you can have different color versions, variations of your logo for each sub-offer. You also want to make sure that you have a one color version of your logo, or that it at least looks good in one color and in grayscale. You're probably not going to use it in black and white, but if you provide any printed products, office forms or something to your patients, it's something they can print and fill out at home, for example, make sure your logo looks good in grayscale and just in one color, because you want to make sure they can actually still read it when they print it out at home. So keep in mind the contrast of the colors in your logo. Sometimes I see logos that have really dark color and a really light color. That makes it really hard when you try to use them on different backgrounds. If you put it on a really dark background, you can't see one of the colors. If you put it on a really light background, you can't see one of the colors. So you have to be careful with this. Here's another pro tip. Make a list of all the places you use your logo. As you're starting out, do it from the beginning. Learn from my mistakes. Every time you put your logo on something, write that down in the same list. Social media accounts, websites, email signatures, business cards, any printed material, third-party apps you might be using. That's what happened to me. For example, I'm using Calendly to schedule calls with my clients. My logo is on that account, facing public. But when I rebranded and I changed my logo, I had totally forgotten about that Calendly page because I never use it myself. I just sent my clients the link and then they go to a page and schedule their calls there. And I accidentally came across it much later and it still had the old logo there. So make that list because you never know if you have to change something. And if you have to change your logo, if you're rebranding for whatever reason, you just go through the list and make sure you put the new logo on everything. Everywhere your logo appears needs to be on that list. Just makes it easier in the future. Something else you need to know about. If you're getting your logo from a designer, these are the file formats you should be getting, you should ask for. For print products, you want a PDF file, EPS file, and AI file. So Adobe Illustrator. Those are vector files, and you will be able to scale them infinitely. So those are important ones for oversized printing, for vinyl cuts, if you want to put your logo on your window, for example, or if you want to do t-shirts like screen printing, you will need vector files like this. For the digital world, you will need JPEGs, PNGs. PNGs have transparent backgrounds. They're really useful. One more tip, if you are using Canva, and you really should, then you also want your logo as an SVG file. So ask your designer for an SVG file, because when you upload that file to Canva, you will be able to change the colors from within Canva. So I upload my logo here to Canva as an SVG file, and you can see it sees that there's gold color and then there's this gray color. Now, if I need to use this logo on a dark background, for example, I'm doing a gray background like this, and I want to use my logo on it, I wouldn't be able to read the text. I would have to upload another version of my logo where the text is white. But instead of having to upload my logo in all the different colors, I can just change it to white right here. Okay? It's just more versatile that way. So ask for an SVG file.